Hello everybody, and thanks for coming back to the channel. This is the GB130. This is the kit from GearBest. And if you've seen my previous videos, you know I have built one up myself from this same frame using very similar components. Similar motors, actually the same motors, same camera, just a different color, and a few other little changes. And I really enjoy this style of frame, and I enjoy flying it. And these 1306 red bottoms are great. I just enjoy them quite a bit. And I say this several times during the build video, which you'll see after the flight footage, but the nylon lock nuts that come with the kit, that just come standard with these motors, they are not going to get the locking mechanism down on the motor threads. You're going to need low profile lock nuts if you want that. They're just too short of motor stems in order to get down on there. These are so much fun. You know, I tend to want to say that it's a monster, but it's just fun to fly. It's agile, it's quick, it's robust. I've crashed these things a number of times, and they just get back up in the air and go again. Now you do see I have different props because I completely annihilated all the other props, doing things that are a little outside of my normal flight. These are just, they're a lot of fun, and I think that GearBest has done a nice job at assembling some of these kits. They continue to use the Emax red bottoms, which are solid performers. My understanding is there are some racers out there that fly these motors in races and compete in national races. According to the new guy that joined Flight Test, T-Bone FPV, I think he has claimed a few times that he uses the red bottoms in races. So if you're interested in a quad like this, and you want to fly micros in small spaces, maybe in your neighborhood, or like me in your backyard, or if you live out in a rural part of your area, these are great fun. They're low cost. They're less likely to break because you have less weight, less inertia, and they're just so much fun, and I really enjoy micros. That's kind of my niche. One other thing that doesn't come with the kit is this battery strap. You'll need to source your own battery strap, and I added a buzzer to mine, but you can pick up these buzzers real cheap off of eBay for just a couple dollars and some patience. So let's get to the flight footage. After the flight footage, we will then go to the FPV flight. But before we go, I want to try something on you all, and I'm going to do it right here at the beginning of the video. I've got a new light, and I'm hoping this helps a little bit, because sometimes I feel there are dark areas in the video that you might not be able to see very well. So this will be camera 1 without the additional light, and now I'm going to plug in the other light. This is camera 2. So which is better? Please let me know. If I get positive feedback on the light, I'll add it and I'll use it in my videos. If not, I'll just do something else with it. Okay, here we go. Let's go do some line of sight first. All right, take this guy for a spin, huh? Woo. Stock PIDs, no tuning whatsoever, just Betaflight 3. I like these frames a lot. They just fly so nice. You can see we've got a stiff breeze. If you can see those leaves out here, it's holding its angle pretty well. Oh, I forgot, not in air mode. We'll do a punch out here for fun. 1, 2, 3. Whoa. That one almost got away from me. He is quick. Better than that P130 Battler. That thing is a dog. You don't have to have big motors to go fast. Let's bring our air mode on here. Whoops. Ah. Backflip didn't go so well. Well, that antenna took a beating on that one, didn't it? Antenna's a little wonky. I'll have to straighten that out. Let's get a fresh battery in the goggles. As we get started, that camera angle, it probably seemed pretty extreme, but as you can see now, it's not that extreme. The quad is just tilted a bit. The fall is setting in here, and the leaves are dropping, and the yard is really falling apart. But anyways, we've stock PIDs here again, Beta Flight 3, and just kind of running it up and down the yard here a little bit, getting used to the sticks, make sure I don't crash and kill it right away. I get a little floaty from time to time. I think that's just a difference in used to the controls, the PID tuning a little bit. Later on, I take some more flights and I do some PID tuning. And I actually just tried transferring the PIDs from the other frame that I built that's very similar. And those PIDs work pretty good. They're better than stock, but they still need a little bit of tweaking yet. So it's really surprising, the minor differences. Also the differences on the weight. This one comes in at 185.5 and the one I built previously comes in at 190.1. I think most of that weight is due to the difference in props. I'm running the HQ indestructible props, and I think those are kind of heavy props. But as you can see, she's pretty agile. You know, this combination of components is really good when it comes to micros. 1306 motors, you know, F3 flight controllers. You get some decent quality ESCs, and it runs pretty well. And I have a lot of fun. I have a lot of fun just ripping this up and down the yard. One of these days, I should get an audio recorder or something out just so I can match up the sound that we have here in the FPV footage to what it sounds like in the yard, because that sounds pretty cool. You know, hearing the motor spin up and the props ripping through the air would really add something, I think, to the FPV footage. But I don't have that for this one, but maybe the next one. Also, I did want to ask that, are the build videos something that are useful, and are they just entertaining, or do you just skip through the build videos? I've done several build videos, and I'm just curious. I've gotten a few comments that the build videos are really handy for some people who are curious about the process of building a brushless quad. But I'd like to get a larger sample, so if you would, please leave a comment down below and let me know whether the build videos are something that you actually watch or not. The analytics for YouTube show that the average view time is only 5 minutes, but I have build videos that are, geez, that the GB190 was, I think, 80 minutes. I'm also wondering, has anyone been able to, on a 3-inch quad, been able to tune out all the prop wash? Just curious. So let me know. I've got all the parts laid out here. We've got our airframe. It's 130 millimeters, motor post to motor post, and then we have our pod plates here. Comes with a PDB. It's very basic, and then we have a 5-volt regulator here, which is kind of a big one. You can definitely get much smaller regulators out there, but this is the one that came in the kit. XT60. We've got our 4 10-amp ESCs from DYS. We've got one complete set of props. Oops, I just knocked those over. We've got our F3 flight controller here. The flight controller comes with the assorted cables that we expect. It also comes with pins, but I won't be using those. I'm going to be direct soldering because the pins are going to create height that we just don't have to work with. We have our VTX, which, as you can see there, HLW, and it says it is 25 milliwatt to 600 milliwatt. And it didn't come with any instructions, so we're going to have to figure out how we switch that. And it comes with 48 channels, it says, unless I'm misreading that. And then you can see it runs from 2 to 6S. So we should be safe running this directly from our power lead. And then we've got our button here for switching. Wonder how long we have to switch it to change the milliwatts on it. And you can see it's a right angle. So their plan is obviously that we stick this somewhere in the pod and then the antenna comes out, which if it works out will be fine. And we'll talk about a little bit more of these parts here in a second. Then we've got a Runcam Swift, a nice CCD camera that has the DWD-R in it, and we have a nice Amway antenna. We've got our red bottom Emax 1306 4000 kV, if you can see that. So a nice set of motors. I've got a top of something I need to cover there, and then we have our assorted nylon standoffs and metal standoffs. Now, if you haven't seen my previous video, I've built a quad using this frame before. And if you want to look at that one, I can show it to you right up here. There's no build video of that one, but here it is. And this one, you can see I've got grass and stuff all over it. You also notice that the profile is pretty low. This isn't a direct kit. I've used different parts, and I went with the orange Runcam. I just thought it would stick out better if it ever was in some grass. But I used an all-in-one PDB, a flight controller. This one also includes an OSD and a current sensor in this one. And you'll also notice that I have low-profile lock nuts on here. And let's take a look at why that is. So if I put a prop on here, now hopefully you can see here at the very top, there's only this top part has the nylon, which is the locking mechanism keeping the nut down, keeping it from spinning. Now, of course, these threads are clockwise and counterclockwise. So technically speaking, if we use the right lock nuts on the right threads, they won't come off anyways. But if we compare that height, we can see that we are not going to be getting this down to the nylon locking part. If I thread it on the right way, I'll be able to show that. So I've got it on there finger tight now, and you can see, hopefully you can see, the nut does not come up to the nylon part. So you can fly like this, and you can hope that, well, it probably wouldn't come undone. I'm just a little bit uncomfortable doing this. And for this build, I went ahead and I bought some low profile lock nuts, and I will be using those on this as well, just to make sure that it doesn't end in a catastrophe. You'll also note on this build that the pod design has a mounting plate up here for your antenna. So that means you have this antenna sticking way up. So I've got this nice low profile, and I've got this ridiculously long antenna, which is actually one of the shorter ones I have. With this setup, this would be down here in the stack, and therefore the antenna will help to stay kind of, it'll just peek out over the top, I think. So if we can fit this in nicely, this would be a good option. Then this mounting hole won't come to play, I don't think. But let's take a look at the frame, and we'll take a look. I'll clear everything else off. We're going to have just the motors, the ESCs, and the frame out, because that's where we'll start, and we'll weigh the frame bits here just to see where our starting point is. Okay, let's weigh a frame up. My recollection is we are going to have to use all these pieces in order to make it assemble. I'm not going to weigh all the screws and nylon lock nuts because that'll vary. So the frame by itself is 34.6 grams. And this should be a 3mm plate. 2.94. So pretty much 3. And I believe these are all 2 mil. Yeah, margin of error on these different things. Yeah, one of the things I like to do when I'm building these micros is I always like to protect the possibility of getting a short off the carbon fiber. So I put down some electrical tape, which I've got a little tiny roll here, and I just put that where the ESCs go, and that helps to ensure, if I can line it up without getting it on the hole there. Just a little added extra protection. You don't have to do this, but I do it whenever I'm building a quad. Looks like I got a little out of hand right there. Probably won't need that space. So I do that to all 4 arms. That way I make sure that I'm not going to get any shorting. And you also need to be careful when you're picking your wires to mount your motor to, that when you mount the motors, that the bolt does not only go through, but it just kind of bites into this bottom area. You don't want it extending up much, so you don't want it going up in here into your windings. You want to make sure it stays down here in the red part. Typically with these motors, they come with 2 different sizes. These are the wires that came out of one of the bags, and I believe we do have 2 different sizes here. Let's check them though. My fingers are gonna get in the way, I think. Yeah, hopefully you can tell. It's just a millimeter or 2, but we've got 2 different sizes there. Hopefully you can see my skin showing through on the left hand side. So you want to, generally, I always pick the shorter ones, and one of the ways you can go about checking that is you can actually stick the screw on the out, or the bolt, whatever you want to call them, on the outside, and then set your motor down in there and see how far up it would go. This would kind of be the maximum. So we'd be in good shape here because you know we're staying down at the red area of the bell. Something else, depending upon your motors, you can do is you can take a flashlight after you get them mounted, and you can see if you can see the top of the thread of the bolt coming through. It's kind of tough, but if you work at it, you can get it. And that's also another way of making sure, because if you get this bolt touching the windings when you turn it on, you might get some magic smoke, and that's always pretty sad. So I need to undress all our ESCs, and then we'll get ready to do some soldering. I've got my ESCs all stripped down naked here, and there's one thing I wanted to cover. This kit does not come with a battery strap, and it also does not come with anything to keep the PDB up off the frame. You could use one of the lock nuts that's in here, but I don't think they've included a screw that's long enough to put it in through the bottom and then be able to get a bite on the top so you can screw something down. So here, your options are either use electrical tape to cover this and then just lay that on top. There aren't any solder points here on the bottom, so you could just risk it. Actually, these look like they're showing through down here, so you're probably going to get a short. I think we really need to get this up off of here. Now, I've got these little nylon washers that I found at my local hardware store, and I bought like, I don't know, 30 of them or something like that. They were like 4 cents a piece. And you can go into your hardware store and just, anything that's plastic, nylon, Teflon, anything that's plastic, to just get that up off the frame just a little tiny bit. So I use the longer screws, poke them up through, you put this washer on top. Do that. What did I do with, I had those all set out. Oh, here they are. It's disappointing they didn't include a battery strap. I think that's a simple oversight that maybe they'll correct. I've found that when you get these kits, if they don't include a battery, they don't come with a battery strap. So that kind of stinks, but I guess if we're building, we're expected to come up with certain things to accommodate ourselves. Now, the PDB is designed, apparently, by the labeling to be this way, to where the nose would be up here, but I'm going to put it off to the side. And some people like to solder the XT60 on before they get going, but I'm going to do that later. So in this scenario, you can see we are going to have a little bit of room, and as long as we have the XT60 not soldered on, we'll be able to slide our battery strap in later. It should slide in just fine. But you're probably thinking, doesn't it go through here? Well, it seems by design, yes, but here's a group of 3S batteries, because that's what's recommended for this kit. These ESCs are only rated from 1 to 3S, and every one of these batteries, this one's really wide, covers those slots, even my narrowest here. So the battery strap would have to come out around to secure it down. So it's not going to, in my opinion, I do not think it will secure the battery as well. with the battery strap running through here, and then kind of you would have a loose payload, I think, down there. So I think the better option is to wrap it all the way around, make sure you get as much force down. And I use Duralock on all my batteries, and I'll put a piece of Duralock here on the bottom to match that. And with the XT60 here off on the side, we'll be able to put longer batteries in there. As you can see with this one, I didn't do that. Sorry, I'm getting my hand in the light. I didn't do that on this one, so I'm limited on the length of the battery I can put in there. A little bit of an oversight on my part, but I tend to fly these smaller batteries and get about 2.5 to 3 minutes of flight time, and I'm fine with that. So this is our setup here. Let's go ahead and put a nylon standoff here on the top. Excuse my reach across your view. Soldering iron is just stage right, and it is getting warm. So there we have our base, and then we would put our motors. These motors all come with directions. So if this one turns in, we want them turning in towards the nose and in towards the tail. So this would be where those motors go, if you can see that. In here, and then we'll squeeze our ESCs between the motor and the PDB, which these are pretty tiny ESCs. I actually did this with little Bs, little B 20 amps, which are bigger than these, so we should be in good shape. But what we need to do is we need to remove these wires, because we're just going to use our motor wires. So let's get doing it. We're all set up to remove these leads over here. This is Fun Tack. And the blue tack, if you watch my other videos, I still have that. And what I'm doing is I'm actually trying this out, because I think this might be more heat resistant, but might not stick quite as well as this. I found the blue tack from time to time will get in between these little bits, so I have to I like to make sure that I get it off clean, so I kind of have to dab it on there a few times. So I'm giving the Fun Tack a try, and I used that in my last build. Actually used them both in my last build. I'm right-handed, so I'm going to come at this from the right to bring in my heat, and then I'm going to pull with the left. Got my soldering iron about 350 degrees Celsius. Nice and hot, easy peasy. So when you're building, just do that the same, and do that for all your ESCs. While we're here, I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of my own solder to each one of those joints. I like to do that just to make sure I get a good joint. I'll also add that to the leads. Just mix in a little bit there, doesn't need a lot. Trying to keep my hands out of the way so you can see as much as possible. It's pretty small, but there's one. Now we just need to do 3 more. Okay, now that we've got our ESCs prepared, I'm going to do a dry fit. I'm going to see how I want to run these wires. Now there's a couple ways you can go. You can do the over and under, or you can do it to where they just loop around, like I've done it this way a few times, where they just loop back to the solder pads, or you can cut them short, or you can cut a little bit off. In this particular case, I was thinking about doing the over and under, because I thought these would be quite a bit smaller than the little Bs. But if you see, I wrap it around here. We just have enough, but I'm a little bit uncomfortable with how close that ESC is to the bell, because this bell is going to be rotating, and we're going to have to wrap that ESC. So if we give ourselves a little bit of space, then it starts to become more of a challenge to solder that on. Can you see that? So that's about the amount of space I want to keep it away from the bells, because it'll be rotating around. But we don't have much to work with there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to trim these all back a little bit. And when I say a little bit, it is just random, kind of. Trim these back a little bit. And take about that much off. Then I'll restrip these. I do this with my fingernails. If your fingernails are too short for that, you can use a knife, or if you have a set of those handy dandy wire strippers, The ones that, you know, they kind of have the claw where they bite down and then strip it off. Those are pretty cool, but I don't have one of those. And I always twist these, and I've said this in other build videos, so if you've seen them, you might not like that I'm saying it again. My dad is a long-time electrician, and when I worked with him as a kid, he always told me to twist them. So I do. Now we're ready to tin these up, and you want to do this, I'll show you one time, and you'll want to do this with all 4 of your motors. Clean your tip. That wasn't very good. Let me try again. I know I shake the camera when I do this, sorry. So we're going to bring our heat in. Get a little bit of solder on there. Solder keeps the distributes the heat to the wire. Want to get good flow through there. Clean that one up a little bit. There we go. Do that one more time just to make sure she's good. Okay. So you do that. Just cut off a little bit. And you could leave it this length, this long length, but I always like to get rid of whatever solder they have there, or at least I want to get a little bit of my own fresh solder on the ends, because these do come pre-tinned. And you could actually get them a lot shorter, but you know, be careful, leave yourself a little bit of length there on the end, because if you catch a motor and you tear it off, or one gets loose or something, and you end up tearing the end of the where it's soldered onto the ESC off, you want a little bit more to be able to trim it back, possibly if you need to, and reattach it, rather than just having to throw the motor away and get a new one. So do that to your motors, and then we'll be ready for the next step. Now with our motors prepped and our ESCs prepped, we're ready to put the motors down to the board, and I do that by using a little bit of thread lock, blue, semi-permanent, and just over here, off screen, I'll show it to you. There's my card with a little bit of little dab. Doesn't take much, and all I pretty much do is I hold the screw on there with my finger and I just kind of rub it around a little bit. Just get a little bit on there. And this can be kind of fiddly, and it's going to be not very entertaining to watch. But we line up our holes, and I just use 2. You can use 4, there's nothing wrong with that, but I generally use 2, and I don't have any problems with the motors coming loose. At least not yet. So we want that motor stem to be right in the center. I've got that other screw a little bit tight. So I'm going to loosen this one back up. I want that to be as much in the center as I can get it, because as you can see, that does rotate. We don't want that rubbing on the carbon fiber. And oftentimes, when you're tightening these down, you've got to get a firm grip with your fingers. So it doesn't move too much on you. And you want to bear down on those a bit. We don't want those coming out. So mount your motors up like that. We'll come back and we'll start soldering the ESCs on. Ready to put our ESCs on. And typically with these motors, they always rotate clockwise. So you've got 2 options when it comes to motors 1 and motor 3. You can either change the motor rotation once you get all set up and configured. You can change those in the BL Heli suite, or the suite of the ESC if you're building something different. Or you can just, instead of wiring these straight to each pad, you can cross any 2 wires. Doesn't matter which one. Usually you go a middle and an outside one, whichever. So you cross those up. So I'm going to go ahead and do this first one and cross it. I'm going to take, I need a couple of pieces of blue tack to keep this thing from scooting around on me. And I'm going to move this into the nearest spot here. So I'm going to put a little bit of blue tack here. Actually, this is fun tack. I'm going to put a little bit more, excuse my reach, over here. That will keep me from moving around. And I'll take this little ball and I'll put it down here. Kind of squish it. Set up our ESC. And we can make our final adjustment to our ESC placement after we get it soldered in place. Actually, I'm going to move that up so we're more centered in our view. And pretty much all we're going to do is just curl these around. This one I typically curl to the outside, but if you aren't filming, you probably do it differently. This is the most fiddly part, is getting set up. Clean my tip again. Shake the camera while I'm at it. So that's one. Now I'm going to bring the outside one to the middle because I want this one to rotate the other way. Grab a hold of it. Now this is going to be really fiddly with me going around the camera here. See if I can get this one to tuck in down here. It's kind of staying out of the way. Ooh, I touched my iron there a bit. That's warm. Can I get in there? I'm going to come in from the back side. Then I like to give them a little bit of a pull test. Seem like they're all on there pretty good. So I'll bring that up close to the camera so you can see. I've got the wires crossed here, so this motor should rotate counterclockwise. And then we just tuck them up under here to get our final placement. Like that. And then we would just kind of push these down and fold these over. And then you can wrap it. I typically use silicone tape, but you can use electrical tape. Anything that's non-conductive should work just fine. You just lay it down flat, and you won't hardly see it. So for motors 2 and 4, you can just do those straight through. We'll go ahead and do those here. Try to get this back in our center view. Grab another ESC. Where'd my little blue tack ball go? I must have, or fun tack. I keep calling this blue tack. Lift these up. Stick that down. And you can actually probably do this off the frame. There's no reason why you couldn't, because you're just going to be bending these wires over. They're nice silicone wires, so that won't give you any fits there. So this one we're going to do straight through. So the outside wire will go to this outside pad, middle wire to the middle pad, and the other outside wire to the outside pad. Actually, I'm going to twist this one this way, see if I can't help it get into the place I'm eventually going to have it anyways. Quite a bit of solder on these stock. I apologize if I am getting my hands in the view. You want to push that wire down in there. You want to try to get this wire actually on the contact pad. That creates the most possible flow for our juice. This one I'm gonna have some difficulties getting it. Looks like we got that one. Give them a little pull test. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Start with the first one we did. Yeah, looks good. So do 2 more of yours just like that. Remember, we want motors 1 and motor 3 to be cross-wired so that they rotate in towards the nose and in towards the tail. I finally got it right with my rotations here. And then these will rotate just the opposite. So these will be straight throughs, these will be cross-wired. Or you can do them all the same way and then change them in the BL Heli suite, which is really nice. We've got this hornet's nest of wires in here, so we need to get organized, or we'll end up making a mistake. So let's route these back out. I like to tuck them underneath. Keeps them out of the way. Well, they're springing loose on me, aren't they? Now we can start to see what we've got to deal with. So we've got plus and minus pads underneath all these wires. I'm just going to go the shortest route possible. So I'd go plus with my red wire for this ESC, and I'd go minus with the black wire. So I'm going to cut this about there. Cut this one about there. Strip these with my fingernails. I know that's shaking the camera as well. Sorry. I'm going to take a little bit more off of that one. So then for this one, I'm going to cut it about here. I'm going to bring this one around this way. That should be enough. Rotate around here. Plus there. Minus there. I'm going to go too short. Got to go around that standoff. Okay. If you don't already have some of these wires, go ahead and keep these, because we are going to need to solder this up too. If this is your, you're looking at this as your first build video, typically you have a PDB that's got a 5 volt and 12 volt regulator on it. Pretty standard. This particular kit, it didn't come one, but they do insert this 5 volt regulator here, which it creates extra work for us. So I wish that they would change this kit to where it did include a PDB with a 5 volt and 12 volt regulator. But we're going to build it as it is. I have PDBs with 5 volts and 12 volts on it. But this is going to be your voltage is going to power your flight controller. I'm going to power the VTX and the camera directly off the battery lead. So it will be able to pull as much juice as it wants. Okay, so we need to strip all these down, and I'll do that and probably I know you can't hardly see this. My hands are completely covering up everything that you might look at. But I'm doing the same things I did with the motor wires and the ESCs when we did those earlier. And I did go ahead and put a little wrapping just to keep everything down. That's silicone tape. I use silicone tape. Some people don't like it. That's okay. I like it because it vulcanizes to itself. I don't have to worry about my old tape, you know, not having the adhesive properties that it once did or anything like that. It always seems to stick to one another real well. This one's real short. Alright. Typically, I tin these up. Oh, I missed one. This one over here. These are so short I can't hardly get my fingers around them to twist them up. So I'm not going to be able to do what my dad always said. But I tend to just bend these up in the air and then tin them kind of freehand. And I'll show you that. So I got to clean my iron again. I don't know how well you're going to be able to see this. There's so much black down there. Let's go for it. Okay. I can't hardly see. There's that one. There's that one. This one's being stubborn. There we go. That one's too short. That's a little better. If you are looking at this first build, you don't have to sit down and build it all in one night. You can take breaks. You can go do something else for a little while. Got a little solder that fell off there. I don't want that hanging around. Go watch a show. Go have a walk or something. You don't have to sit down and do this all in one go. Matter of fact, it's pretty rare that I sit down and build one outright, just right from the get-go. I usually have something to go do, whether it's soccer or swimming or something with one of the kids. So if I got 2 hours, I'll set up and I'll build, usually filming it, and then I'll go do that other thing, come back to it when I got some time, build again. Alright, now we just need to, I'm going to get some more blue tack here on my arms. I don't want this sliding around on me. I keep calling this blue tack. It's the second time or third time I've done that already. It's fun tack, even though this one is more blue. Blue tack is gray. Fun tack is blue. Come on. Oh, I forgot to do something right away, early on. Okay, so I've made a mistake. I should have tinned up all these pads before we ever placed the PDB. But, you know, not all is lost. We can go ahead and do that now. It's just going to be a little bit more cumbersome. Sometimes we forget. But it's not that we forgot that's important. It's how we go about fixing it. Now, come on. Is that not going to... I'll probably go ahead and fast forward this if you've seen that much. It's pretty much just over and over and over and over and over again. Get yourself a decent amount on there. Why is there so much smoke? Was I touching something? Ooh. I'm not going to use these middle pads at all. Well, matter of fact, we can use them for this. In and out. Okay, so fine, we will. Let's use this one. And that's a plus over there. Yeah, I couldn't see it. You probably could, but I couldn't. These are really close together. It always bothers me when they get this close. I've built a Carbon Q, if you haven't seen that one. That's a really tight build, and I did that one with a Pico BLX. It's a really small flight controller and PDB all in one. Works great from Furious FPV. And those solder pads are pretty close together, but not too bad. I find it interesting that sometimes you have solder pads that are so close together on these full-sized 30mm boards. They're actually, I think, 36 or 35.5mm posts, but they put them so close together. Why not space them out just a little bit? Decrease the chances that we'll make a mistake. Alright, that should be sufficient. This will probably be the most challenging one for me because it is a fair distance away from me. Got the camera between us here. Sorry, I gotta get my hand in the view again. Sorry, I'm completely covering that up. I had to angle it. That's actually not great. That's a little better. I don't know how I'm going to get this one and show it to you. Yeah, I'll have to do that one as I spin it around. I'll pull this one out of the way. Not sure I like that one. Can't get my face close enough. No, I don't like that one at all. It's this standoff I keep hitting when I try to get some downward pressure on it. It's better. I did that one kind of blind, and it looks like I did it blind too. It stuck good though. We're going to live with that. Excuse my reach once again. Got too much needle nose under that one. Need to turn it so I can get this one. Clean my tip. Probably should have cleaned it before. Do our pull tests, see if anything comes loose. Alright, very good. So I've got our PDB out here, and the only reason I've got that out is you might want to rotate this way in order to gain easier access to the USB port. Technically it's the same, but you might not want it next to this. But you can always do it this way too, and I mean that's perfectly acceptable. There's no reason why you can't. But I'm going to take a look. This guy's going to have to sit right down the middle because we've got some bulk here. Just wanted to look at how I wanted to orientate this board. I think what I'm going to do, because this is in, I'll actually use a really small piece. I'm going to solder two on here, and I'll put some foam tape on this, connect these up, and then I'll run two other wires out. So this wire is going to need to be pretty short. Now let me pull this away. We're going to just cut this little bit here. Forgot what I was doing there for a second. I was about to cut that again. I'm going to trim this edge down just a touch. Use a little bit more of our fun tack. And we'll tin these up. You're probably struggling to see this because with the distance it is away from me, it's not exactly easy for me to see it in real life either, let alone through YouTube. Now those are going to be hot. I'm going to need to wait a second before I touch those because the other end of that wire is probably pretty hot too. See how that's sticking? Guess this is no more, the fun tack is no more thermal resistant than the blue tack. So let's tin this up. You could poke them through the holes, that's why the holes are there. You could poke it through those holes and solder it that way. I'm just going to tin them up and lay them on there just like we did with the PDB. Matter of fact, I'm going to put them on the top because I'm going to have foam tape on the bottom. So, take another look at this. Yeah. So I'm just going to tin up. Let me grab my pointer. The two inside pads on each side. Clean my tip. I'll rotate this board around so it's easier to bring the heat from the right hand side because I'm right-handed. Bring the heat. That's a baseball term. Some of you out there will know what that means to me. Okay, so we got to do in over here. That's where our short wires are going to go. Positive up top, negative on the bottom. Let's do positive first. And then before we go too far, I'm going to pick two of the longer ones of our scraps here. So that one and that one. And all this needs to do is reach from here up to the top. And these are our motor wires. So our signal and ground will go up here. Focus camera. So these are 1, 2, 3, and 4. They'll all be in use for the signal and the ground. And then we can use any of these others for the plus and the ground for our voltage to our flight controller. That's what we're working on right now. Well, that camera doesn't want to focus. Okay. Hopefully you get the picture even if it wasn't that clear in the camera. So I'm going to cut these to the same length just to make things easy. You can use smaller wires. It really doesn't matter. We're only carrying 5 volts, so I just like to use the scraps left over from all our other cutting. It seems wasteful not to. Steal our blue tack so we can tin. I'm going to make this. Boy, it sure picks up the dirt from my fingers, this blue tack does, doesn't it? Wow. Make a little hot dog there so I can do both sides. Clean the tip again. This one's low. Ooh, it's warm too. I apply heat to one side, I get a little bit of solder going, and then I try to bring the solder through to the other side. Okay, I've rotated it around. We're going the same way. Red will be down here, black will be up here. Well, that blue tack didn't hold. Come on now. Maybe that's got a good bite. Yeah. That should definitely hold. Bring our quad back in. What do you think? Should we do our foam tape now or later? We should have enough leeway in there. I don't know what happened, but it stopped recording at some point, so I'm going to need to sort that out. So I'm going to put some tape here. Right across there, and that should protect us. I'm going to go ahead and leave mine with the default orientation. Okay, it's starting to come together. I took a little break and come back to find our next step, which is to connect my receiver, because I'm going to sandwich it between the flight controller and the top plate. I put together the pod so you can take a look at that, and this will sit right on top of these standoffs. After you put the little metal bits on there, it'll sit right on top, and I made sure that I was going to have clearance for my receiver on there. Now, when I did my dry fit, I need to take this back off, I found that these wouldn't reach like I want, so I've got to redo those, unfortunately. And I've also tinned up my little connector for my Lemon satellite, and I am going to solder that here. As you see, I've got it 10 for my 3.3 volt, and then my ground right here, and then my signal right here. So I'm going to do that. I'll get the board in place like I wanted it with different wires over here. They weren't quite long enough. And then we'll be ready to connect our signal and ground from our ESCs. Here are how things look now. You can see I've added some hot glue right here. I've got my lead all soldered up, and I've decased my satellite, and then I've added a little hot glue to these arms to give them some strength. If you're not familiar with the Lemon satellites, I use those a lot because they are very inexpensive. You can get them for around $10 or less, and they work fine for me. So I don't have a problem. I know that we all have different camps that we belong to, I guess. As far as receivers, I use a Devo, so I use all sorts of different kinds, but these are some of the least expensive. I have yet to try some of the like iRange brands that have come out that are compatible with FrSky and other protocols. And you can see I've also soldered my wires on so that they go up towards the nose. And I think earlier in the video I was talking about the motors, and I was off a bit. I think referring to this motor as motor 1. That's not, that's motor 2. So these are motors 2 and 3, 1 and 4. I'll add a notation to that if I did get it wrong, but I was thinking, for whatever reason, in a minute as I was routing these wires, I think I was calling this motor 1, but it's not, it's motor 2. And I've also got these signal and ground wires laid out, because I want those to go underneath the board and the loop around the front. I want to solder everything from the front. That's why I have my power for my flight controller at the front. And that is the reason behind that is so that if we need to get to the PDB to do any repairs, we should be able to wiggle this up off the standoffs and then fold it forward so that we can get to it. So I try to bring everything in from the same side and give it a little bit of slack. We don't need a lot of slack because these standoffs aren't very long, but that does allow for more easy repairs rather than having the motor wires string across the top, because then you have to desolder at least 2 of them in order to get that off. And you can do it one of 2 ways. You can mark these to remind yourself, or you can keep track of them. And my marking pen, my silver marking pen, seems to have gone missing. So what I'm going to do is when I get close to these wires, I'll pull on them and see which one moves. If these aren't touching each other, I should be able to tell by looking at the back. And that when I pull on this one, that wire should wiggle. Pull on that one, this wire should wiggle. So let's put the flight controller down on top. And then we need to tin up our pads. Make sure our wires aren't necessarily pinched. Right here is my area of concern. I'm going to pull that back off. Seems to be okay though. Maybe give this one a little bit more slack and okay, let's put it back down. Make sure it's all the way down. I like to go ahead and put my standoffs at least loosely on at this point, so that I don't solder anything too close to that area and have to make an adjustment by taking the wires off. And I am using the metal standoffs here because that's what they show in the picture when they have their kit build up. I really think that they need to build these and show at least a picture. But I guess in this case you can always reference this video to how I'm building it, because they don't show you how it looks when you've got it all built up, so you don't know how they plan for this receiver to be oriented. And that's something we're going to be coming to here very shortly, is how does that receiver with that right angle adapter go in here, because that's a little bit different than the other one that I built that was just using this same frame. It seems like it has to go in here somewhere. We've got zip tie notches right in there, if you can see that, but I don't think we're going to be able to get anywhere near that. So I'm a little bit curious, and it's not going to fit under here, and if it did even fit under here, then we can't get to our button to switch our channels. So that's something I'm going to have to work out. But let's turn this around. Let's go ahead and tin up our signal, which is this row up here. And this is our voltage, which we'll only be using that down here for power to our flight controller, and then our ground. I go ahead and use the ground Many people say you don't have to. Other times people have noted with some boards, some ESCs, some motors that you get excess noise if you don't have the ground attached. So I think as long as you've got all these ports, why not use them? It doesn't really hurt us, and the weight savings is got to be very, very minimal. I would say somewhere less than a half a gram. So we're going to do that, or I'm going to do that in this kit. So I'm going to go ahead and tin these up. So down here on 8, we do not need to tin up on our signal. We just need to tin for our voltage and our ground. And then around the rest of these, the first 1 through 4, this one's a little hard for me to see. Careful not to touch my receiver with my hot iron. Just need signal and ground. Okay, there we go. First thing I think we need to do is we need to get our power for our flight controller hooked up, and then I'll turn it again back around this way, or I can do it all from down here, I guess. Now I'm going to do the voltage first because the ground's closer to my right. If I can get these wires moved away. My hands are going to be in the way here for a second. I apologize. Well, maybe if I bring it in this way, I'll be able to film it a little bit more. Clean my tip off again. I think I've got it positioned in a way I can get this done. Oh, didn't even have a hold of it, I guess. Give that a little pull test. Whoops. Feels good. This wire might be a little long, but it should stay below the props. Closer inspection, make sure that wire is not touching anything else. Not crazy about that, actually. I don't think it's touching, I just don't like the solder joint on it. Another little pull test. Okay, that should be good. Let's start with motor wire 1, which I believe is this one. Let me do a little check here. Yep. I'm going to keep these as twisted as I can. Don't want them terrible short. I know it's probably difficult to see what my fingers are doing here. I'm just kind of getting a fit. So I'm going to just snip this end off here. So I'm going to tin those kind of in the air like I did previously. Quite a bit of burn back there. I was hanging around too long. seen where Final Glide actually just put a blob on his solder and then brought it, and you can do that too. I've been doing it this way, so I just kind of stick with it. Alright, so I'm going to use my left hand. I'm going to go after the ground first because it's the wire that's going to be in the most difficult to do if I did the ground this signal first. If you like watching build videos, Boba Fett FPV, he has traditionally he's done build videos on Thursday nights. I think they start at 8 Central Standard Time, but he has been so successful at racing, and as a sponsored pilot I think he's gotten busy, but I know he tries to get back to that. And I watch his build videos just to pick up any tips. It's a little bit hard to see what he's doing. Oh, I put that on the wrong one. Jeez Louise. So that's motor 1 taken care of. This is 3. This is 2. And this will go, actually this will come down here. I'll route and I'll stick that down here with some foam tape so it'll stay out of the way of all of our wires, and it will flip off with the board. So I can go right over the top of that. That'll be fine. So this one will be especially short. Cut that off there. I'm struggling to get these. There we go. Signal wire is a little bit long, actually. I'm going to cut the ground. Cut the signal again. Start long. If we go short, then we have to put an extension on, and I can't stand doing that because it always put the heat shrink on and shrink it down, and the wire gets stiff. So again, we're going to do our ground first. I like to keep the wires twisted because that decreases noise that might be coming across the wire. And any excess noise that we have, our flight controller either has to work a little harder to deal with it, or it gives us flight difficulties. No, that's not working. That's better. Give those a moment. Okay. So we've got 1 and 2 done. Just do the same for 3 and 4. Got our flight controller all secured up. You can see I put some black electrical tape here on the back side of my receiver. And to make sure my antennas would stay out of the way, I did do a prop adjustment. There is some clearance. You might be worried about it coming up there, and I am too. And I think to give it some more rigidity from keeping out of the props, I might add a dab of hot glue right to the top of that port, and that should help with air, and I can do the same over here. You can see I've got the battery strap in now too. If you have any troubles getting the battery strap through, just loosen the screws in the bottom a little bit, and you may have to secure these with, I just used my finger as I unscrewed and screwed them in, and that was enough to get them back tight, feed your strap through. With the particular washers I use, you can see how close that board is, and I did cover the backside with electrical tape, so sliding it through wasn't quite as simple with that tape, so I did loosen that up, fed it through, and secured it back down, and everything is fine again. So we're down to our FPV gear. This actually goes this way. I'll take this prop off. We don't need that. And I've got part of the pod assembled here, and you're probably wondering why part of the pod. And that is because I'm trying to sort out how we're going to mount everything. And I've got these long old leads, which of course we don't need every bit of that. And if I line this camera up, well, that's not going to stay in there. Get it centered in the hole where it kind of grabs. There we go. And we're going to have some up tilt here. Trying to show you this without getting my fingers all over and misaligning everything. But we got this bottom plate we have to think about too, which goes right in that slot. So this is going to be pretty tight to put it in here. More up tilt, of course, creates more space, but that's pretty extreme up tilt there. So I don't know if this is exactly how I'm going to do it, but I think what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to wire the video cables together, the two yellow wires here. And I don't think we're going to be able to use this post because I think our video receiver is going to be in the way. So that pod is going to be a touch weaker because it doesn't have that third point, which concerns me as well. But I don't see a way around it. We definitely can't get it underneath the stack anywhere. And we've got this right angle we have to integrate, and we want that going up. But if we can get enough space in here, we can have this back plate in this farthest back slot, if I can get that to stay. And then we can put our antenna here on the back side of this with a zip tie, and we could actually, with the top plate, maybe create an extra spot to secure the antenna through, looping zip ties around through there. It's not ideal by any stretch, but it's probably about what we're going to have to do. I can't think of another way. But as I get into it and I find a different way, we may come right back here. Let's look at the VTX a little bit. It's nicely labeled here. We've got the outside black wires are ground and our 5 volt. If you're running a 5 volt camera, we're not. So I am going to take those pins out, or I'm going to de-pin those or de-wire that connector on those two sides. And then we've got our video, our ground, and then our battery. And as I said earlier, I'm going to go ahead and solder both the camera and the VTX directly to the top side of this. So I'll be doing that last. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the wires down through here, or one of these spots, and anywhere you have a gap that you can shoot to get it down over here. And then you can pull any excess wires up into the pod to keep anything from getting in the props. To de-pin this is relatively simple. It's going to be difficult to see. Make sure I get the right side here. So we're taking these two wires here off. To do that, I just get a hold of one wire. I usually push them in a little bit. There's little tabs up there that they grab a hold. Take a little knife of some sort. Get it just underneath that plastic, just a touch, or even on the edge. Get it underneath there, pull. I actually got this one too. You pull them both out. You don't want to pull them up very far because you may want to go back and add those for some reason. And these are nice silicone wires, so I always save those. So now we have less clutter to deal with, that's for sure. So I've done this before with my other build using the same frame and similar components, and there just isn't a really good way to film this because my hands just get in the way a lot. But let's just do some estimations here. Our video wire can be extraordinarily short because they're going to be right next to each other. We're going to have to bring those together with some heat shrink. Use a very small amount. but in order to give us some leeway so that if we need to move it, I'm gonna, you know, cut it about here. I don't know if you can hear that, but one of my kids upstairs is excited about something they're doing. And then we'll do the same with this video wire. We don't need a lot here, but just a little space, so if we need to get the OSD connector in there so we can change some settings on our camera, we'll be able to do that. Get it outside the pod and be able to plug it in. So I'm just going to snip that here. And now someone's running up there. Whoa. I might have to go check that out. Doesn't sound like a fight. So I'll have this like that. This like that. We'll have plenty of space to separate the two and still be able to work without having to completely disassemble the pod. Usually when I work on these, I just take one side of the pod off like you see here, and then, you know, you kind of have to fiddle getting all the different pieces back in. But one thing, when we do it this way, when we zip tie this, that means if you've only got one antenna that you're using, say the one in the kit, and you want to try another one, you're going to have to cut the zip ties, of course, in order to try another antenna. If you're using one antenna across multiple vehicles, that's going to create a little extra work just to swap the antenna around. Keep that in mind. So once we get it secured, we're not done for, but it's not going to be easy to swap out antennas. I'm going to work on getting this pod together, and we'll come back and we'll take a final look at it after I've got it all assembled, and then we need to do the battery lead. And while we're at the battery lead, when you do that, and I can film that. The kit doesn't come with another one. It only comes with this top part. Okay, I got to take a break and investigate that. This is what we're up against right now, and I've got the main wires run down through a front hole, and I'll show you that in just a second. But this is about the camera tilt I have on the other frame that I built that's just like this, and we just don't have enough space to get this underneath there, and we're actually going to be a little bit away from the back plate, which I was going to secure the antenna to, but I think we can use a loop and a loop system to secure the antenna, and this will stay centered. It won't be able to turn enough to where it gets in the props. But we still won't be able to use that lower post that should go right here where my back finger is. That should be coming through, because this is going to sit there and block it. I can't see an alternative to that outside of mounting this completely outside the frame, and that's a bad idea. Or mounting it on top, and I'm not going to do that because then it would just land on it all the time. Or I always say land when I mean crash. I must crash an awful lot. So this is how I'm going to put things, and you can see if I take the pod apart here that I do have enough space to where I'll be able to work on the camera, get to the OSD connection, or if I need to change out the VTX or a wire comes loose or something, I'll be able to work on them both. So I've left a little bit of wire there from the power side as well, and that just all tucks up into this pod here. And you can also see that I used the front spot because this is sitting over the back spots. And I thought this might cover that as well, so I just routed them through that front slot. So when we come back, I should have this together, and we will be ready to check our motor directions to make sure where those are wired up correctly, or if we need to make any changes there. We can test our FPV, and if you haven't done so already, make sure your receiver's set up and working, and then we can go do some line of sight, and we can test this and do the FPV as well, which is always fun, right? Here we are in our final assembled state, and you can see I've got my antennas glued down. I've done that on both sides. I've got our props on. Remember, these low profile lock nuts, they don't come with the kit. The other ones will be fine, but you're going to really need to tighten them down because the nylon locking part resides in the top of the nut, and that won't get down on the motor threads. You can see I've kind of used a loop and a loop to secure the antenna, and the VTX is just hanging on by the antenna. This will limit our ability to change out antennas, so you're probably going to want to just leave this one on here. And I did think about running the VTX vertically and then have the connector come out this way and then bend the antenna up. And that is another option. And you could actually probably move this back plate in one notch if you did that, because I do think there's space behind this little part of the camera to do that. I didn't. If I have any troubles, I might come back and do that. I did add a buzzer to this one. You can pick up buzzers from eBay. I think I bought 10 for $5 from eBay, and they're just as good as anything else as far as I'm concerned. I did change out my silicone tape for something. I used the full size instead of half strips, and I did that because we're getting into the season around here to where we're getting dew on the grass, and I wanted to limit the possibility I'd get a short from coming down on the grass and frying something in there. You can see I've got a little pigtail here. You can run XT60s just fine. I could have soldered in the wires directly in here. I chose not to do that, and this is the way I run it on the other one. My batteries come out to be just about this height, so it sits flat after I've got everything said and done. If I were to change anything, I'm kind of becoming a fan of those all-in-one boards. I know that there's risk if any one part fails, the whole thing is possibly dead. But I really like a low profile, and we only gain, 10 or 12 millimeters there possibly. An OSD would be nice. I'm becoming a fan of that as well because of my experience with this one. It just made tuning so much simpler for me, and I was able to get a pretty decent tune in a much quicker time frame. The other thing I change is this 5 volt, the PDB and the 5 volt they've included. It works just fine. It's not going to be a problem, at least initially here. It seems to be working just fine. Long term, it's hard to say, but that PDB is just extraordinarily inexpensive. I think if they'd have just given us a $10 PDB that had a 5 volt regulator and a 12 volt regulator built into it, that would have been fine. It would have been nice, actually. The motors rotate properly the way we wired them. So if you cross wire motors 2 and 3, and I think I covered this earlier in the video, I was actually calling this motor 1, but it's not, it's motor 2, so 1, 2, 3, 4. That gets them to rotate in the proper direction. So nothing really to change there. I did put Betaflight on the board, Betaflight 3, and my different modes. I'm going to put in these other 2 screws, and we'll be done. If you have any questions or comments, leave those in the section down below. And thanks for watching.